just a little way in from the beach, and we quickly find a variety of terrestrial plants. Now, these plants are tough by any standard. They have to survive quite violent storms, high temperatures, high salt content, and they have to deal with the limited amounts of nutrients and water that are on these islands. In the area just behind the beach are Pandanus trees. Now, they often have a bright yellowy orange fruit like this one. This one is actually not mature, but these fruits can be cooked and eaten. Now, the seeds can travel long distances by floating in the ocean. And I just went down to the high tide mark and picked up a whole series of Pandanus fruits that have obviously been in the water for some time. And this is why this particular tree, because these seeds can float from island to island, is found throughout the Indo-Pacific region. This is a plant called the Octopus Bush, which is a plant from the genus Heliotropium, and it's also salt and desiccation tolerant and has curious little flowers that look like the legs of an octopus. Now, in some parts of the Pacific, Heliotropium is used to treat ciguatera poisoning. Now, ciguatera poisoning comes from the accumulation of toxins in food webs associated with coral reefs. And these toxins can accumulate in the tissues of fish and cause sickness and sometimes death in humans that eat them. This is another plant that grows on Heron Island. It's a member of this small terrestrial ecosystem here. And it's just another example of these remarkable plants that live in such high temperatures, low water and high salt soils. Now we've entered the forest here on Heron Island, and all you see around us here are trees from the genus Pisonia. Now, this is a common tree in the Indo-Pacific region, which also goes by another name, birdcatcher trees. And this is because they reputedly use their sticky seeds to entrap birds, so the birds die and commit nutrients to the soil around the tree. It is an interesting hypothesis. Could it be that these trees are trying to entangle birds on the island so that they commit their nutrients to the soil? Well, it's a fascinating possibility. What is clear is that birds like the noddy tern are an important transport means by which the seeds of Pisonia are transferred from island to island. You see, a few seeds stuck on the feathers of a bird and eventually shed on another island is an important mechanism by which to get seeds from one place to another. And I suppose one could almost argue it's a nice mutualistic arrangement, whereby the same trees that are benefiting from the birds are providing nesting habitats for the same birds. In October and November of each year, a series of birds, including noddy terns, arrive in very large numbers to nest in these islands. And in fact, at this moment, there's probably several thousand nesting pairs of birds on a few hectares of the island. Now, these islands are absolutely essential to the reproduction of these birds, as they are to a whole range of other creatures, such as sea turtles. These islands are relatively free of predation and also offer the benefits of access to the rich productivity of the ocean at this time of the year. Now, one of the big threats to island populations like this is the introduction of animals such as cats and rats, which would rapidly decimate the eggs and nests on these islands. Unfortunately, this has occurred in many parts of the world, and many breeding colonies have retracted or gone extinct locally. One thing that strikes anyone visiting the thousands of low-lying islands like this one is just how much life there is on land. Islands like Heron Island have complex ecosystems that can be described in terms of food webs and trophic pyramids. For example, noddy terns eat fish from the surrounding waters of the Great Barrier Reef, which ultimately have fed on zooplankton, which have in turn eaten phytoplankton. And of course, phytoplankton are the primary producers in this system, drawing energy from the sun. Now, noddy terns in themselves fall prey to the eastern reef egrets and the white-bellied sea eagles that also inhabit the island. And despite the fact that Heron Island is only 16 hectares in size, there's an awful lot going on here. Let's see if we can find some of the other members of the Heron Island ecosystem. These islands are really important as colonies for reproduction, and we see a lot of noddy terns that have laid the first egg by this time of the year. Many of them have a new chick which is being fed by the parents, bringing food from the ocean and regurgitating it down the mouths of the chick. And by March next year, these chicks will have fledged and will have left the island rookery. And after that point they'll be flying out at sea. They won't return until the following October, when they too will come back to breed on the island here. Now, also breeding at this time are the ground-dwelling birds, the buff-banded rail. Now, they like to creep through the Pisonia forest. They're omnivorous and they're highly camouflaged. Oh, there's one. I can see one over there. And these have 3 to 4 chicks, so it's quite cute when you see the mother hen with these little tiny fluffy baby buff-banded rails following behind mother. Now, they eat a combination of plant and animal material, and in many ways can be a pest when you're at the research station, because they become quite domesticated and will often steal your food at the station. Now, ecosystems like Heron Island are highly dynamic in terms of the organisms and interactions that are present at any one time. Because of the isolation by water and their small size, islands can go through periods in which communities and indeed ecosystems can change quite dramatically. Now, I remember about 15 years ago on One Tree Island, which is very close to Heron Island, there was a sudden outbreak of hawk moths, which is a large moth that normally eats leaves like the Pisonia tree. And these suddenly outbroke in very large numbers, literally removed most of the leaves from the trees. And the only thing we could identify was the fact that the buff-banded rail had disappeared from One Tree Island during a storm. And because the predator on the grub wasn't there, the hawk moth could get out of control and develop into very large numbers. And this is very typical of islands, which are highly dynamic. And this has been the focus of a lot of research with people that have been trying to understand island biogeography and indeed island population dynamics. And there's a number of references which we suggest you read if you're interested in this rather volatile ecosystem that we see on islands like Heron Island and One Tree Island. Well, we are now on the other side of the forest, and I can see the reef flat ahead of me through the trees. So let's go down and have a look what might lie beyond the water's edge.